Welcome everyone to the second day of the ICNS 2025, the 25th edition of the Integrated Communication, Navigation and Surveillance Conference. Yesterday we had about 300 people on site and more than 2,000 views on live stream. We started off with a welcome remarks from the EUROCONTROL Director General Raoul. We had a very engaging keynote from EASA's Executive Director Florian, attended to great panel sessions with Colin and Predrag and Veren and Akim. And we had 8 parallel technical sessions from the 6 technical tracks with 60 technical papers. We closed the day with a reception, thanking our sponsors and announcing the best track and best of conference paper awards. These awards recognize the outstanding quality of the professional and student papers. Allow me to take 1 minute to note that out of the 6 best of track papers, 2 papers doubled down by winning both the student as well as the professional best of track category. Really, congratulations. Really, congratulations to the next generations of CNS professionals in aviation. Also, congratulations to the Aerion colleagues, Giuseppe, John, and Mike, who won the Best of the Conference Paper Award for their paper, Independent Estimation of Aircraft Positions Using Space-Based ADS-B Data for GNSS Anomaly Identification and Investigations. Well done. That was for yesterday. For today, we have a very full program, and I want really to thank all of you that you came back and you joined us today in person at the EUROCONTROL headquarters. Also want to thank those of you that are joining us through the EUROCONTROL live stream channels. So without further ado, I want to invite Maria Grazia Lapiscopia, the SESAR Deployment Manager's Executive Director, to make her welcoming remarks representing the second of our hosting organizations. Maria Grazia.
So thank you very much, Nikos, and welcome all to the second day of the 25th Integrated Communication, Navigation and Surveillance Conference. It is really a great pleasure for me to open these exciting days, at least the second day of discussions and events, and I'm happy to have in the room around 300 people. It's what they told me. So really a big number. And many more are connected to the live streaming from all over the world. So as Nico said, I am the Executive Director of the SESAR Deployment Manager, the industrial partnership in charge of coordinating the deployment of those SESAR technologies which require synchronization by all involved operational stakeholders. As explained yesterday also by our EC colleagues in the second plenary session on how to accelerate deployment. These technologies, like for example, the initial trajectory information sharing, a key enabler for TBO, are included since 2021 into the Common Project 1, the EU regulation that mandates the deployment of 6 ATM functionalities across the Union. For our coordination and synchronization task, a well-performing CNS infrastructure is a key enabler for success. And we think about the future, if we think about the future of ATM, a close one, I hope, if we refer, for example, to the expected shift to trajectory-based operation, it is clear that we need to have an efficient and integrated CNS, which supports the operations and performances of all stakeholders. So considering the importance of CNS in ATM technology modernization, we also decided to work hand in hand with our colleagues of the CNS program manager team here in EUROCONTROL. Working together, allowing alignment, collaboration, cross-fertilization is paramount. In particular, considering the benefits and efficiency it could bring to operational stakeholders. Operational stakeholders are the ones investing and are investing in CNS modernization. And we see it clearly as there are big multi-stakeholder projects that we are coordinating as part of an initiative called the Green CNS Initiative, a co-funded project by European Commission through the Connecting Europe facility, which bring together some of the largest airlines, NSPs and airports with implementation that go from data link upgrades, AOC offload for airlines in particular, to PBN, SBus, and ADSB. Our task is to support the ones that are investing and implementing, focus on the harmonization needs among different stakeholders, suppliers, and countries, and pursue the defragmentation as much as possible. And we all know which benefits could come from a truly harmonized CNS for ATM safety, security, and efficiency. Now, we have an interesting day ahead of us with 2 stimulated and important plenary sessions in the morning, which will address and discuss respectively the way CNS services can or should be provided in the future, and the impact that the space-based and satellite-based technologies could have. I'm sure that the GNSS spoofing, which was identified also yesterday as one of the key challenges, will be addressed through these sessions as well. This is extremely important as we are all looking to work together to establish new models that do not just ensure harmonization or defragmentation, but also drive down costs using, where possible, common approaches, optimizing the deployment of CNS infrastructure. In the afternoon, we will also have an incredible opportunity to learn and understand the specifics and the latest trends of CNS technologies. We have 16 sessions and over 120 papers. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, okay, even more, to be presented and discussed by great experts coming from all over the world. And all this will be followed by an inspirational keynote this evening from Luca Parmitano, something which I'm really excited about, as you don't get often to hear from an Air Force pilot and engineer that is also the first Italian to work in space, in command of the International Space Mission, spending over 1 year in orbit. I don't want to steal additional time from the stimulating day we have ahead of us, as the schedule is already very packed. So I immediately give the floor back to Nikos, our wonderful chair of ceremony. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Maria Grazia. So I think that ICNS is really honored actually to have Flor Diaz Pulido, the head of the Single European Sky, providing the opening keynote for the day 2. And we will hear from Flor actually the European Commission's policy perspective on CNS evolution and setting a strategic view for the evolution of the CNS system and services. So Flor, welcome to ICNS 2025.
Hi everybody and good morning. Let's take me a couple of seconds because I am in awe. It's the first time that I speak here in EUROCONTROL, and I don't know if you know, but I am really new on the file. It's 4 months ago, I didn't know much about CNS, ATM, or whatever. So my second point to all of you is bear with me. Usually I do not read, I talk because I know that it is very difficult to follow long speech and we tend to lose track, but I will not be my best today. Sorry, I apologize from the beginning because I really need to get the support of my wonderful team who is sitting there behind me. Without Lendina, without Paco, I would not be able to say what I'm gonna say. And just that I see, give me a second. Paco, may I have a bit of water? It's because, sorry everybody, but I know I will not be able to read all this without some water. Thank you. You see, one is nobody without the team. even for the water. So with this first second of saying thank you to everybody, first of all, for having invited me, secondly, for welcoming me in your community, and third, for putting up with me today, because I will not be as brilliant as I should be. I start by saying that it is an honor for me to address this Communication, Navigation and Surveillance conference. And this is, if I know well, this is the first time that we hold this conference in Europe. So welcome twice. Welcome twice to our beautiful continent. Then the second thing I wanted to tell you is that, and this I know by now, I don't need to read, is that the CNS infrastructure is a key enabler for the single European sky. We cannot get one without the other. So I would need a glass. There is no glass. Okay, then you bear with me drinking from the bottle. Sorry. What I wanted to say is that we, the European Commission, we support the harmonization of a harmonized deployment of all this technology. And for that, we have our SESAR framework, and we have all the set of interoperability regulations under SESAR. SESAR is the Single European Sky. For those who are not following, is the Single European Sky. And since 2023, we have delegated the the transposition of all these interoperability regulations to EASA. So if there are two pillars that I'm going to mention here today, is EASA, who is doing a great role in their oversight of all these interoperability regulations. And the second big leg for the way we build all this matter in the European Union is SESAR. Is SESAR Joint Undertaking, SESAR Deployment Management, is the SESAR project, the SESAR dream that I think is doing really good in Europe. And for that, I wanted to say, you know that SESAR adopted, I mean, with us, with the Commission, but the master plan, the ATM master plan was adopted in December last year. And there we have a vision on how the CNS technologies will contribute to development of the digital European sky. And I believe in the digital European sky, even if you cannot ask me to exactly define it right now, but you know it better than me, and I know that we need it. So this roadmap, as I said, provides the vision, and this modernization of all the, this modernization of all the CNS infrastructure in Europe is needed for at least 7 things, as Lendina and Paco have told me. So the 7 things are capacity, resilience, scalability, automation, efficiency, reducing cost, and enabling a service-oriented approach. What I think it is the future. It is really the future. If we really want to have an ATM and an air navigation services community that is really performant in Europe, we need this service-oriented approach. So believe in EASA, believe in SESAR, and believe on the fact that we have a vision and we know where we want to bring the European continent forward in this matter. Another point that I wanted to tell you, coming from the past, is those old in the town, as we say in Spanish, they remember that the Commission appointed an advisory group some years ago, just to get an advice on how we could do better and what was the way forward. And this advisory group, they pointed out to the need of a program management approach to be able to develop and deployment all this new infrastructure that we need. And the Commission decided to assign this CNS program manager task to network manager, so to EUROCONTROL. And again, thank you for having me here, and thank you for having taken up this task, because what I hear from everybody is that the network manager is doing a great job in this engaging with civil, with military, with all the stakeholders, with the member states, and with other European organizations. So, so we are looking forward getting the CNS evolution plan that I think the network manager is developing for us. And we will work there to define better the deployment and rationalization of the CNS in line with the ATM master plan. And this is important for me, and that I do not read, I say because it is really important for me. We need to make sure that we all work together in the same vision. And the vision is now in the ATM master plan. The CNS evolution is part of this ATM master plan, and we really need to work, all of us together, towards this deployment, because if not, we will be scattered again, and the capacity problem that we have in the European skies will stay here. I am changing to another angle of these complex files, which is the performance and charging scheme. And we know that the CNS, communication, navigation, and services and surveillance services, they take more or less 16% of the cost, of the total cost of the provision of air navigation services. 16% is a lot. I come from the internal market. I'm more used to airlines, and they would fight for a 2%. So 16 to reduce 2% of their cost. 16% is a lot. So there is room to do better and to modernize and to avoid overlaps and to increase the synchronization of all the infrastructure and all the technology, so that we can help our users to pay less, and we can help our air navigation service providers to be more efficient and to be able to do even more with a little bit less. So two things here. Sorry, give me a second that I do not lose myself. Yeah, another point that I've learned is that the rationalization of the whole infrastructure is not exactly the same for everybody. There are some member states where, for instance, legacy is huge, and maybe we need some rationalization there to identify which is the part of the legacy that we should get rid of. But in other member states, the case is exactly the opposite. Maybe they trim too much. Maybe there is not enough infrastructure deployed today, and notably because we know that we are in a very different geopolitical situation that we were 6 months ago. I think if we go back to last summer, none of us could have thought that we could be where we are today. So we know that there are a lot of, I mean, from Finland to Cyprus, if I take my east flank, there is a lot of interferences. The GNS services are not as reliable as they should be, and therefore to keep a minimum of legacy and ground infrastructure is something that we need to ensure the safety, the business continuity, and the military operations. So, and this is why we know in the Commission that the cost reduction objective needs to be balanced with other objectives. It cannot be an objective on its own. We need to make it sure that it's balanced with safety, that it is balanced with environment and with capacity needs. Okay, so reduction of cost, yes, we are all for it, but within a more general framework. I am moving into the international aspects, and internationally, we all know that the planes that fly here fly everywhere else in the world. We need that this interoperability goes beyond the European frontiers, and this is why we engage and we work with the ICAO in general, and this is why this ICNS conference, this international event, is very important for Europe, and we are so lucky to have you here today, because we really would like and that CNS systems and the services are interoperable worldwide. I am moving into the policy perspective on CNS developments, on the communication, the navigation, and the surveillance developments. And regarding the communication, I will start with that. What I have learned by now is that air-ground connectivity is key. And it is one of the SESAR deployment objectives, and it is in the ATM master plan, and it is one of the 3 priorities for the network manager board. So this air-ground connectivity is something on which we really need to work, and we need this connectivity to exchange data, you know that better than me, between the ground and the air, so that we can increase and make better the implementation of some things like getting more efficient and reduce the delays, which at the end of the day is what we want. We want a European single sky where everybody flies seamless and where there are no delays and no cancellations of flights. And this is why I urge all of you stakeholders to keep engaged to address the technical and operational problems of the current data link technology and working to evolve to a multi-link system. And that I know is we need indeed to evolve from the data link technology that we have today, and we really need to get into a multi-link that ensure robustness, that ensure redundancy, and that ensure a better combination of ground and satellite-based technologies. I am moving now to the performance, because that was regarding the communication. If I move now into the navigation, the performance-based navigation, the only thing I can tell you is that EASA is now evaluating the assumptions that were made when the PBN regulation was adopted in 2018. It is too early for me to tell you which will be the outcome of the EASA evaluation. I want just to make sure to everybody that we will work with EASA in such a sense that safety is not compromised by 2030. We still stick to what we thought was the right goal, but safety goes always first in our aviation community. The second thing I wanted to say, I said it already before, GNS interferences, the fact that we need to be able to have more than one system to rely on. And maybe here I wanted to say that we can just not stand still regarding all this jamming and spoofing, and raising the safety flag at ICAO and ITU is very good, something that we need to do and that we are doing, but at the same time, it may not be enough. We need to protect our European interest with measures that I cannot tell you yet which they will be, but we clearly need to take measures at short, medium, and long time to make sure that our planes can keep flying with the level of safety that you, the air navigation community, are used to provide them. And so I hope that tomorrow, because I understand that you have a plenary session tomorrow on cybersecurity and resilience, I hope that you will help us to define the necessary actions and that we can move ahead better. And I am more than half of my speech. I am getting to the surveillance now. And we know that, how can I say that without reading? We believe that sharing data and the use of radars between neighbor countries, between neighbor INSPs and states could help to reduce the CAPEX cost at European level and could help to share some OPEX cost. So this idea that I can support and work more with my neighbor country and the two INSPs together, we think that is key for the reduction of cost and for the more efficiency service delivery that we have in mind. Now I am moving to the spectrum. We all know that we need the spectrum, we need the bandwidth to be able to communicate, and until now, the aviation community enjoyed our use of our bandwidth, and it was relatively safe. We didn't interfere with anybody. The 21st century is changing that as well. We know that more and more, and that thanks again to Paco for having explaining that, we are fighting with others like the 5G, other technologies that gets into our spectrum and may squeeze us a little bit more than we want, or may oblige us to take some measures that we wouldn't like to take. And this is why I call on the member states to ensure that aviation spectrum is given high priority and that adequate resources are allocated to the needs in the spectrum for our community. So that these adequate resources are allocated in the global radio spectrum in ITU notably. And we in the Commission, we are working inter-service to ensure that we come with a vision, with a roadmap, so that we have a unique European consistent approach in all the international arena. I am getting, I think, to the end, the civil military cooperation, the dual use. and the new entrants. All these are concepts that maybe were not so much here 5 years ago, but we know again that in today's environment, this is a too long sentence. We all know that in the geopolitical situation where we are, we need to collaborate more, even more than in the past with the military, and that whatever we do for the CNS systems, they should enhance both civil and military air traffic operations at the same time. And we know that there is nothing but gain in working in dual use and coming with technologies, with services, with ways of working that can be accommodate both the civil and the military at the same time. And I cannot forget the new entrants, the drones, the remote pilot aircraft, this that looks for me science fiction, and it's like if we were really, I am peeping with you into the future. We need to make sure that these new entrants, they can have their access to the airspace and that we can provide the necessary services for these new communities and not only for our traditional plane community. And then I think I am getting really to the end. European space systems in support of aviation. Yeah, it's just to give you two notes. EGNOS and Galileo, we all know because they have been with us for almost the whole century. We still rely on them, but the new girl in town is IRIS Square. And you know that the Commission is committed to get the IRIS Square constellation working by 2030. We all know that in satellites, deadlines are not always, but I think this one we are gonna take. We are really gonna deliver because we need a secure and resilient satellite-based connectivity. We know that we need that. Aviation needs that, but the continent needs this. We cannot keep relying our communication on third countries, infrastructure and capacity of this side. So this is why I am personally really committed to the IRIS Square project. I really believe on it. I know that DigiDefis is doing their best to make it move forward so that we can enhance the connectivity, we can reduce the fragmentations, and we can improve the CNS service continuity in the safe and secure manner that we need. And then regarding to the single European sky, the SES2+, the famous SES2+, that got into application in December last year, we really believe that is a step forward to increase the efficiency in the European airspace, and the regulation introduces more choice for the air navigation service providers on how you can organize the service provision, including the option to buy services in the market. And this is key. Again, I have a very long experience in aviation, but always in the airlines and the airports matter. I have seen how opening the market bring miracles to a service. So this possibility to buy services on the market is something that we really welcome from the Commission side. We know that there are still a couple of legal challenges. That is typical. Sorry, because I think I've been with you too long. I'm about to lose you, so I prefer to skip some sentences and keep you with me. What I would like to say that has already been said, yeah, maybe the fact that the regulation strengthens the importance of managing the infrastructure of the European ATM network that includes the CNS infrastructure. That is a key point and is one of our key actions. And for that, maybe we need to revise the network management role and the way that you are working. We are starting that procedure, the process of reflection with the network manager and with the member states. We hope that the new NM implementing regulation will be here before the end of next year. Okay, so give me this year to reflect, to consult, to talk to everybody, and next year to draft and negotiate with member states. But I really think that we need to update the network manager functions to the new reality of SES2+. I am committed to do that. And then another point that maybe you are not fully aware, in the next CES2 Plus, the famous Article 11.4, it increases, so it brings new requirements regarding the certification, the security, the ownership and control of the CNS services, because these are strategic assets. And I think this is the fourth time I mentioned in my time with you, the fact that we are in a very different geopolitical moment, and we need to be sure that that there is this strategic security of supply and strategic autonomy that is more and more in the mouth of us doing the European policy. And for that, we are, because we know that it is a complex article to apply, we are working with our member states to first get a mapping to know which services we are talking about and who is providing those services on the 27 plus the European Economic Area states. And then we will be working with the member states to come with a compliance plan. But my pitch here and my plea to all of you, the stakeholders, is that let's help us to implement this article. Let's persuade the private sector that they need to come along with the new European reality and that they need to readjust and think out of the box and maybe come with European brands so that we can ensure that this ownership and control new requirement, which is here to stay. We cannot fool each other. We cannot think that in 4 years' time there will be another election somewhere and the president will be different. The reality that we have is here to stay. So for that, we really need the private sector to help us to secure that they are certified by EASA and that they are owned and controlled by Europeans, as it is the case in China, United States, and other places. And miraculously, I am getting to my closing remarks. So with this, I am finishing. As we embark on today's discussion, I encourage all of you to engage in an open dialogue. Again, for that, I don't need to read. I really ask you to engage in an open dialogue, share expertise, and contribute to shape the future of the CNS, because you are the backbone of the air navigation services. Without you, we cannot deliver the way we would like in Europe. And for that, I count on you to drive forward solutions that enhance interoperability, that enhance efficiency, that enhance sustainability. For those who don't know me, I am the mother of refuel aviation, so sustainability, please, let's not forget that, and resilience for aviation, to make sure that our airspace keeps being the safest in the world with no delays and with no cancellations. And with this, my pitch to you, looking forward to a productive conferencing, wishing you the best, and I promise next time I will not have the computer in front of me.
Thank you very much for this speech, Flor. So I think that I have to make 2 points. First of all, is that you talk a lot about CNS services, and these things are going to be addressed by a next panel, actually. So this is really very topical.
Okay.
The other thing to say is that, I mean, if that's the first time that you're addressing the CNS aspect and you cover it with such a good and wide, we really think that we're in good hands with your team, actually, that you're really looking into the CNS aspect, because technology is really critical to make the operations happening. So also we are very honored from the ICNS perspective that you are opening a kind of a speech in this room and also for ICNS. And as a small thank you, we want to give you this to remember ICNS. And I want to make an invite. So in 4 years, ICNS will be coming most likely back to Europe. Okay. So maybe in Brussels, somewhere else. So maybe we want already to invite you to give an opening keynote to try to see what happened in these 4 years. And then to try to see what is the situation. So thank you very much.
I take the challenge.
Thank you very much. So I think that we will start actually going with our next talk. I don't know if our guests will get, so we'll. Then we can go actually with the next panel. So I will invite actually Paul Bosman, the head of infrastructure in EUROCONTROL, that will actually deal us with the next plenary session, which is really also the theme of our this year's conference. It is really about integrated CNS and towards innovative and efficient CNS services provision. So, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nikos. Thank you very much, Maria Garcia and Floor. It's very difficult to present now after you, after all the energy you put into the room. So again, thank you very much. Thank you all to be here. Thank you all for coming back. As we always say, the first day you come out of curiosity, but if you come back then a second day, there must be something good in it all for you. So we're very happy to see that. Also, and I need to tell you a little story here. I mean, Nikos has been going for ICNS in Washington since a long time. I'm going there since about 2015. And you guys there, you put the bar very high in terms of the format with the speakers as well as the papers, in terms of the top-notch keynote speakers, etc. In terms of even playing casino in the evenings, etc. I remember that one vividly. And so about, I think it was 3 years ago, Nikos, we came with this idea to maybe we could bring ICNS to Europe. And I am really grateful for the trust that we got from the other people in the organizing committee, from Sherry, from Denise, from Paul, from Brent, I'm sure Alok, I'm sure I'm forgetting people, etc. I mean, you took a huge gamble to give your baby into our hands, at least for this one session. And we've done all our real best to live up to the high standard that you've put in place. And again, the fact that we have so many people here around the table, I think is already a good indication of the ICNS continuing to live. So again, after the power women that we just had in as keynote speakers, etc., in order to do diversity, we created a men-only session now. Yeah. So I'm sure next time we will do the mix and mingling even better, etc. So after yesterday, where we discussed about accelerating, first of all, the harmonization of CNS, which is really, really important. I mean, aircraft have this tendency to fly around the world. To see how we could accelerate the deployment of CNS, I think it is high time that we now start to see at more modern examples on how we can accelerate actually the deployment by doing CNS really as a managed service. And in that sense, we are very happy to have the speakers here of today, a real blend of US and European speakers. Now, this is not as easy as it used to be. Yeah, I don't think I'm saying anything special here, but again, we're very grateful for our American partners to be here, and also for Manuel, for you, to come and give us the regulatory perspective. And so, just to do a very quick introduction, we've got Pierre from ESSP, Dieter from Frequentis, John from L3 Harris, Fabrizio from ENAV, and Manuel from EASA. And with that said, I think we quickly go into the sessions. They all have a couple of slides to introduce their topic, to share lessons learned, best practices, and then there is time for Q&A. Yeah? So get ready. And Pierre, I give the floor first to you.
Good morning, everyone. Great pleasure to be able to exchange with all the community in the same place, all the stakeholders of the community. It's very, very appreciated. I'm going to tell you about services and collaboration. Maybe a few words first about ESSP, because for sure, probably some international colleagues are not necessarily knowing about ESSP. ESSP, we are a CNS service provider. Our legacy is from space-based system, but we also operate ground infrastructure across Europe and beyond. One particularity of ESSP is we are a service provider certified since more 15 years ago as INSP for navigation services, and since 2023, with regard to the 373 regulation as a communication service provider. ESSP is about collaboration from its genesis. Collaboration, cooperation between several West European INSPs to make happen a new service, which at that time was EGNOS, or is EGNOS, still EGNOS. ESSP is operating currently several services, EGNOS, IRIS for communication. I'm going to further introduce you those two services right after, and a space weather service on behalf of ICAO, for which we are providing some solar event forecasts to support aviation stakeholders. It's important to notice that ESSP is a pure service provider. We are not owning our infrastructure. We are used to develop services in partnership. We are operating and providing services based on European Commission infrastructures. We are providing and operating services based on industry infrastructures. So we are totally independent from the infrastructure, and we are focusing our expertise on the service provision. So first, let's tell about IRIS. IRIS, which is a SATCOM data link service, is a very good example of cooperation. What is the date of birth of IRIS? I can answer you. In fact, each time I'm meeting some senior data link experts, they always tell me, "Oh, I started to contribute to the IRIS CBA in 2010," and the other telling, "Oh, but I work on the concept in the 2000." And after you met another expert who tell you, "Oh, I started on the initial concept, which was Antares in the 90s." So IRIS concept is there for the last 30 years, and it has been developed in cooperation with regard to different stakeholders on the last 30 years. But IRIS is now a reality. IRIS is in operation since a year and a half, with a certified service which have been certified in 2023. So the development of the service have been a strong cooperation based on an ESA program and a partnership with the industry, a public-private partnership between ESA and Viasat. Of course, ESSP have supported this development, and now we are operating this service since a year and a half, and this service is in operation thanks again to the cooperation of all stakeholders of CNS community. INSPs have answer present with a ground network which is quite representative, airlines with EasyJet, which is a pilot airline, and the industry who have made available the service for free to start the early operation of IRIS. IRIS is expected. IRIS is there to support the future of aviation, supporting the future challenges with regard data, enabling to support EPP regulation, to also make a greener operation. The service is in operation, but the challenge is not yet over. Now we have to make it a sustainable service with the adoption of the service, for which the challenge remains to synchronize all the stakeholders to make this service effectively sustainable. About the opportunities for this service is also the overall interest. As I said, there is some expectations which started from Europe, but now we see also the larger interest worldwide in some regions to answer to some common needs with regard some congestion or addressing areas which are not covered by VDLMO2. Now a few words about EGNOS. EGNOS is a SBAS system, SBAS service, owned by European Commission, which have delegated the management to EUSPA, European Space Program Agency, for which ESSP is providing the service and operating the service. EGNOS have answered to a specific needs, which was to improve navigation operations, and notably thanks to safety of life applications like precise approaches. The service, the maturity of the service is of course not comparable to IRIS. The service is in operation since the last 15 years. As I told you, the safety of life service is in operation since 2011. So we had on the last 15 years a very large adoption of the service and driven first by aviation. And today we are operating, users are operating and using more than 1,000 procedures across 500 airports in Europe. But the challenges for EGNOS are not are slightly different than IRIS, for instance. With regard to the adoption, we have more and more usages of EGNOS, and we told about cooperation and collaboration, and EGNOS is also a very good example of multi-market service. Of course, EGNOS have been developed and driven by aviation market, but it's also used for other transport and agriculture markets. Today, the largest community of users on EGNOS are farmers for precise agriculture. And last year, we have declared a new service, a new maritime service to support notably inland navigation. So the challenge with regard to EGNOS is to fit with this large adoption and to keep the same level of performance with having more and more users. Other kind of challenges, which are much more with regard to the evolution of our environment, with regard to the threats, with regard also the different topics. Flor told about interferences. So there is some challenges with regard the evolution of the service, of the system to better fit with the evolution of the service. After two operational services, I'm going to introduce you a concept, a project, which is a project, again, led by ESA, which is EURIALO program. The purpose of this program is to answer to some new needs, to allow new service level for the users based on an independent space-based surveillance solution. The purpose is really to address new usages like space-based surveillance on continental areas, on dense areas, as well as, of course, other areas. The purpose of this is really to be complementary with regard to the ground infrastructure, to answer to new needs, and also to be able to allow the users to rationalize their infrastructure. So this concept has been developed last year with preliminary design and will be validated next year with a validation demonstration. 4 satellites will be in space to make such validation. So we are far away yet from an operational service, and the challenges with regard to this kind of project is really to better fit the technology, the requirements with regard to an achievable service model. So that was the main messages that I was willing to share with you about those services. I shared with you 3 different kind of services. One which is very mature, EGNOS. Another one which is an operation, but for which we still have to confirm the service provision and the sustainability of the service, and a new concept. There is a constant with regard those 3 services, which is the request of important infrastructure to sustain such service. Today, each of the stakeholders is not able to sustain such infrastructure such investment by itself. We really need cooperation, collaboration between the different stakeholders, ground users, airspace users, and industry to make happen such services. A way forward for this, and we tell about a lot of the importance of the technology with new services like multi-link, new services to come, and of course, technology allow a new business model which were not at all possible a few years ago. I think about new space and so on, a few years ago, and we have taken over some business cases that we presented 5 years ago to some stakeholders and which are now today are more attractive for the community. But a way forward to this is to further think about services as of R&D activities to further involve the service sustainability within the development of the requirements. The technological path is quite clear with R&D support, with deployment of technology, but we also have to think about services to make at the end the technology happen. And this is a matter of safety. This is a matter of answering of the with regard the new needs and to adapt to our environment. But it's also our duty. I guess that all of us, if we are around this table, is probably because most of you in your childhood, you have dreamed about aviation and about high-end technologies. So it's also our duty for safety reasons, to answer to the needs, to make happen and to keep aviation with high-end technology to continue to make dream people and to connect people. Last but not least, just to answer to yesterday's question, and I will be sharp, the question was about is ICNS realistic? For sure, from a technological point of view, there is no barrier. We have seen it with some technology, ground technologies. Now there is several space-based concepts which are addressing several streams, navigation, communication in the same time. But the topic is not a matter of technology. The topic is a matter of service and a model. And whatever the technology will be present, the technology will be in operation if there is some service model. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pierre, very much. It's good, very good to see how the portfolio of the ESSP is further developing and further strengthening our European service provision on this very important topic. I know we're all very passionate about our topics. Yeah, we are constrained for time, also because we started our session a bit later than originally planned, etc. So I need to lean on the remaining speakers to really be a bit more efficient the rest of the time. Our next speaker is Dieter from Frequentis. As you all know, Frequentis is an Austrian European company, but very active in the US. And we thought, therefore, it would be very relevant to get your lessons learned. Dieter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paul. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Buenos dias, señores y señoras. Guten Morgen. And in Austria, we like to say servus. And in America, we like to say good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you can imagine, I've been asked to speak a little faster, so I'll try my best. So I've been living in the United States for 25 years, but before that, I used to be at Frequentis headquarters in Vienna, Austria. So I still have a very hard German accent, and I'm here today to put the C into CNS. C stands for? Thank you, communication. So communication it is. So the C in CNS, as you can see, having spent several years in Europe, I've been working on the transformation of the analog communications network in Europe into what has been called ATSQs in the mid-90s. And when I moved over into the United States, I transitioned quite into the next round. This started in around 2000, 2001, trying to move this into IP. And I tell you, we are still not there. So, but I would like to ask a question. So has the digital age in aviation arrived? What do you say, yes or no? Raise your hands. Well, let's think about it. Aviation, well, I would say yes. So if I fly, you know, I can do everything with my cell phone. I can check in with my cell phone, everything. But in ATC, not so much. So where do we stand? Yeah. So I want to focus specifically on communications. Yeah, I know CNS is communication, navigation, surveillance, and there's this little ATM on the side, which we have kind of dropped a little bit. But I want to speak about communication specifically. As you can see, Benjamin Franklin, about 250 years ago, already thought about communication to be the most important aspect into the future. But in some countries, especially voice communications, is still done analog. And I don't want to specifically name several countries, but it is still one of the major problems when you go into the future of providing really a managed service. And it's something that hinders us. And we heard before on floor that it is one of the major aspects now in the single European sky to implement really a digital air-ground communication into the aircraft. On the other side of the Atlantic, it's the same priority now also of this new administration. That new administration wants to accelerate that. So we in the industry welcome that, although acceleration has its issues. But I would like to mention this, which I pulled from the air traffic management voice publication from EUROCONTROL. I think this was issued in 2019, somewhere around that. It's still on the webpage of EUROCONTROL. That the migration of ATM services is supposed to be finalized by December 2020. I think we have now 2025. I still believe we're on the way there. But most disturbing is, I think, the next statement. There's that of all the 193 ICAO members, less than 20% have completed the migration. And it's just, it's not a real study I did. I just looked through like our market analysis. Perhaps the real number is below 20%, more in the range of 10%. I don't know what you think. Yeah, more or less than 10%. So it is a major issue. So what makes the migration so hard? What makes it difficult? Well, it is not a migration. It is a transformation. The last migration we had in communications happened in the 80s when we switched from analog telephony into ISDN. Suddenly we could have cell phones. Suddenly when it was raining, we would not have bad transmissions anymore. People my age can still remember, it was raining and suddenly you heard the on the phone. Now we have telephones, iPhones and whatnot. So what you hear is, you hear these outages. Suddenly you say, hey, good morning, mother. Oh, how are you doing? So anyway, the transformation of into IP is most important aspect these days. So I was trying to put a few thoughts together when we think about how we do this across the world, the issues that we face. And so you have on the one side the legacy the legacy systems, and on the other side you have in the world of IP, of internet telephony, new topics that you see. In the legacy world, you had to deal with telecom test sets, tone generators, so-called punch-down blocks where cables were mounted. And what could go wrong? There was noise on the telephone circuits. You got out-of-service tones, busy tones and whatnot. And you had to replace purpose-built equipment. LAU stands for line replaceable units. These were purpose-built for that purpose. Nowadays, in the world of IP, we deal with voice IP testers, so-called Wireshark tools. The whole tooling changes. The whole workforce has now issues that they are not used to dealing with that. The telco people who are used to dealing with the equipment have to be completely re-educated. You have structured cabling. What goes wrong? It's not that you have noise on telco circuits, because now everything is packets. So there is no noise possible in there, but you have packet loss. Packet loss can create outages. That's a basic safety hazard. It's a real big issue. You have network latency, jitter, and you have the issue of you have to provision new services, servers and equipment. And you live now in the so-called COTS world, the commercial off-the-shelf world. But you have to deal with what the Dells, the Ciscos, the HPs of the world give you. So What was the worst case scenario in the old world? It was the so-called the oscilloscope. It was the most difficult telecom type of equipment that you had to handle. Nowadays, the worst case is, oh, you have to learn Linux commands using a command line. Windows can't be used anymore. So this is the new world we live in. So what's the issue that you have to face is you have to have certain considerations. In the voice over IP world, you have to deal with bandwidth limitations. So, and I would like to have to talk to people who write requirements. It is not the same that existed in the past. It was not about how many circuits do I need to provision or deploy. Now it means you have to have enough bandwidth. You have to calculate that, how much you need. You have to have a quality of service that not only do you have to require it from the vendors, it actually has to be configured in the service, in the telco service that's available. And what you can see, the next element is test, test, test. A lot of times, because we want to speed up things, we want to cut short testing. In the safety world, that's the biggest no-no. In the world of safety critical systems, you have to test. And you don't only have to test your equipment, you have to test all network segments end-to-end of the complete service. So when you start to segmentize the service provision, the risk is that you only test each segment and then think, well, if I have 3 segments, I have 3 tests. That means the whole system works. Not in the IP world anymore. It doesn't. And I think this is what is easily underestimated. And one really particular important aspect is the users, the people. The people are most important, that they have to be retrained. So I have to put a list here of what not to do. This is one of the most important aspects right on top. Assign the different network segments to different providers, and don't look at that end to end. And this is something that is specifically a topic that's right now a subject in the United States. The way the FAA has structured their elements, it is very siloized, and not really looked at end-to-end as a complete end-to-end service. So, and that calls for trouble ahead. Load testing, testing all fault cases, doing a really safety-based approach, what we call an ATM grade approach. And last but not least, the troubling subject of IT security. IT security is easily specified. People write papers about this, but implementation is a different story, especially in large networks. You have to put patches out there. You have to patch networks. To be able to patch networks, that means also you have to have a provisioning environment in place. And I think we'll hear later from my friend here from Harris, who is going to talk about, I think, the network in the US. This is a concept how it is done properly. So last but not least, it is the workforce educating the technical workforce is key. Workforce has to be retrained. These are things that a vendor cannot do. The workforce that is going to operate these systems, and I'm talking here about technical operations, needs to learn this new tooling. So it's not about cable test sets anymore. It's about Linux, Wireshark, VLANs, VPNs, IP addresses, SIP addresses, keys, security keys. So the technician of the future is an IT engineer, an IT technician, and not a telco person anymore. And I think this is something what we see in a lot of NSPs, that there's not enough consideration that the workforce needs to get educated in parallel to the deployment of all the systems. So with that, I would like to say thank you, and I hope I didn't speak too fast.
Thank you, Dieter. And again, very good to see that there is no free ride in all this CNS transformation, etc. And it's just hard work. So really with your hands in the mud and go for it, and really make sure that you've got the right people, rightly trained, etc. So again, thank you very much for that. Now, the US in many ways was, I would say, about 10, 12 years ahead of us when it comes to starting to do CNS as a managed service. We have had lots of contacts with the FAA in the past to see how to set up such a managed service, etc. And they also quickly then also referred to one of their prime subcontractors, L3 Harris, who has built up a lot of knowledge into running ICNS or CNS as a managed service. And for that, I'm grateful, John, for you to be here. And please give us your lessons learned and challenges around managed CNS services.
Great, thank you, Paul. Dieter, you didn't say you're going to roast us while you were doing your presentation. That was good. I liked it. So thank you again. Thank you to EUROCONTROL and the European community for hosting us. This is my 15th year at ICNS. Now, normally ICNS is 5 minutes from my office, and I have to find every excuse to not go back. So thank you for giving me the excuse of being 3,000 miles away from my office. And I enjoy coming to Brussels. So as Paul mentioned, and to have the US perspective on managed services, what I'd like to do is actually describe the mindset from the ANSP perspective, because I can tell you all day what we do inside the service provider, but the key on a managed service is actually the relationship between the service provider and the ANSP. It's developing a trust relationship because you are becoming a mission partner in the day-to-day operation, right? We like to say that we are not a commercial service provider. Give us your requirements, we'll give you a network, and you know, we'll call us when there's a problem. Our workforce, day in, day out, 24/7, 365 days a year, is working in partnership with our FAA colleagues that are responsible for the safety of the National Airspace System. So those that may not be familiar with L3 Harris, just our footprint here. I mean, the United States is our primary area of operation. You see all the logos at the top of our programs. The key managed service programs are the FAA telecommunications infrastructure. That is the network backbone that connects 4,400 facilities. Now, when the FAA says facilities, every radio site, every radar is a facility. So there's not 4,400 buildings. The other one is the automatic dependent surveillance broadcast program. That is actually run as a true managed service where the infrastructure is in fact owned by L3 Harris and data is provided to the FAA. We have operations in India and Australia as well, a splattering of other programs, but what I want to focus on today is actually the FTI program, because this was truly the first transformation. As Paul mentioned, the FAA in 2002, understanding what it takes to migrate a network service and really transform a backbone to prepare for the United States, the next gen program, and really the beginnings of what we're now sitting out for trajectory-based operations. So what are the drivers that an ANSP like the United States was using to gauge where they were going to go with a network transformation and a backbone to a managed service? Well, when you came in, first off, so the mid to late 90s, there was a commercial network provider, but there were multiple controlling entities inside the ANSP. Of course, this is dependent on how you are structured as an ANSP, but there were multiple organizations that all had authority for their area. And as part of that, they controlled different aspects. So they had devices, they had access control, they had requirements, all in different silos of control, all appropriately authorities, but governing different requirements to a service provider. And those were competing interests that were not aligned to a single accountable executive. So it's really impossible to implement a network backbone when you have competing interests and competing executives that are not aligning to a single set of requirements. Prior to FTI coming online in 2002, well, 2002, the contract was awarded. So shortly after that, there were 7 independent networks just operating air traffic control in the United States, all with their own individualized access control, bandwidth management, technical refresh schedules. It just was not aligned to a harmonized, centralized backbone. And as part of that, no centralized configuration control. Changes were made on each of the other networks, not coordinated. So then you would have service outages, you would have just changes that weren't recognized appropriately. And it wasn't for, and on purpose, it's just the legacy infrastructure the United States had built over the previous 30 years was working for the air traffic mission at the time, but was not set up for what they needed to do towards a future transformation. The other thing in a commercial service provider, they tend to make changes and not tell you. How many times has your internet service gone out because they changed, they cut a cable somewhere or they changed a provision and you have an internet outage for, a number of hours? It's not immune to just the commercial service world. It does happen in what we call purpose-built network services. So our job as L3 Harris is to not only manage a network backbone, but manage a relationship with the telecommunication providers that actually own the physical network infrastructure at a lot of these sites. is a daily job, just coordinating when they have an engineer that goes out and accidentally does something or on purpose because of construction, and we have to manage that. It's obviously not acceptable when you're in a safety critical environment where you have the appropriate redundancy, but at the end of the day, need to have service availability to meet the certification or the safety requirements. So you had inconsistent reliability and you had rising costs. As this became more and more inefficient, you had a bill that kept going up and not sustainable. So the pre-FTI telecom costs averaged $400 million a year. And you'll see in a moment what going to a managed service structure actually went to. And you had no real viable path to modernization outside of, in the United States' case, asking Congress for a lot of money to go do a massive modernization. So how do we manage the challenges? Well, you had customer expectations. The biggest one, and Dieter pointed out too, safety is paramount. You cannot do anything that violates safety, no matter how much it means modernization. The roles and responsibilities for day-to-day operations are not fully aligned prior to the rollout of the managed service. We also have labor relations. There's jobs that will change. There's roles that will change and you have to coordinate that as far in advance as possible. And we talked about workforce planning as well. You have to have an education that stays paced not only with the technology maturation, but for the legacy technology that will stay in place for some period of time during the transition. And you look at the examination of job specialties and which specialty jobs will transition and which may stay inside the ANSP organization. And also the budget and spending transition. Look, you do have an opportunity in managed service to move from CapEx modernization to an OpEx based. It's a big value that we see, but you have to plan that appropriately because your OpEx budget may not be at a level where you can do that modernization. So what we ultimately rolled out was, really a core IP network backbone. Now there's still legacy connectivity, a lot of the sites that's currently going through modernization, but taking the network to 99.999% availability, increasing the bandwidth by up to 5 times. The telco spend we cut in half, and comms-related air traffic delays down 99%. And I mean, this has been the backbone of what enabled the FAA to do the other next-gen transformations. So what do we take the lessons learned for moving forward into the future? Workforce planning is a priority. You have to ensure the critical roles are transitioning to the managed service provider, have an adequate timeline, the reassignment and retraining, and the early relationships with collective bargaining organizations. In the United States, a lot of, almost the entirety of the workforce is under some amount of representation. So you can't just make changes to the workforce without having essential buy-in. We've also seen success in what we call the try before buy. So if possible, conduct the trial period with one or more managed service providers to understand what the benefits will be or where maybe the requirements are not fully thought out. Don't get yourself into a contract situation that's not ideal and then be stuck. There really has to be mutual trust and a positive relationship between the ANSP and the managed service provider. If there's not, it will not succeed. We attribute the success of L3Harris to the success of the relationship between us and the FAA on a day-to-day basis. If we did not have that, it would not be successful. And safety always remains paramount. We never do anything that violates the risk of safety in the national airspace system. The safety oversight customer has to have visibility into all aspects of the operation. They have to be aware of what's happening and when changes are being made. The FAA is actually now implementing safety management system at the contractor level. The airlines have had it for a number of years, but we're now starting to see requirements for managed service providers to actually implement SNS as well. This is a key culture change, but I think definitely for the better, and we're working with the FAA on that. So a very quick summary of where we are from a managed service provider.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Really, really appreciate it. I think what we really learned from this is that a managed service setup really has its benefits, but there's a lot of investments to be done upfront. Training again of the people, setting up this partnership with the ANSP, and really put in place this change management culture, etc. And these are things really not to be taken lightly, as we also see in Europe every day. Now, our next speaker is from what we identified as, again, I would say, a good example, a good European example with our Italian NSP, ENAV, and Fabrizio is going to show us what they have put in place to control and monitor their own network in Italy. Fabrizio.
Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to be here and honored to speak in front of such a qualified audience today. I'm Fabrizio Fiori, Head of Engineering Department in TechnoSky, kind of a group company. And I will try to approach the concept of ICNS from a different perspective, giving an overview of the maintenance model that ENAV at TechnoSky decided to implement in the recent years from 2020 to improve the levels of safety and operational availability of the CNS infrastructure. Just a few words about who we are. TechnoSky, as I said, is an ENAV group company that is responsible for managing and maintaining the entire range of hardware and software platform and systems used to deliver navigation services, but also for engineering and integrating air traffic control systems. So what was the need to change the maintenance model and system compared to the one that had been consolidated for over 30 years in the past? Well, the answer is in these numbers. We are almost 800 people. Most of them are asset engineers, 600 people that are spread over the Italian territory and maintain and operate the almost 60,000 devices that are spread on the 4 ACC and 45 airports we have in Italy and 86 remote sites where communication, navigation, and surveillance systems are installed. The organization has the responsibility to manage almost 140,000 tickets per year, 15,000 job plans per year, and can guarantee an operational availability of 99.94% with the first resolution, with the first contact resolution rate of 90.68% and an average restore time of 33 minutes. I will skip the agenda just to go straight to the vision that inspired us to implement this new model. At the center, you see the human being, the digital worker, the new ATSAP engineer, as we are intending it. He's a new version of the engineer with some technology to allow faster and safer operations in the maintenance process. So we have smart glasses for the asset identification and augmented reality, mobile apps to retrieve all the information on the systems and to retrieve technical documentation. We have implemented drones to conduct some maintenance operations like infrastructure monitoring or the ILS ground checks and some other sensors to allow preventive maintenance. Well, let's see how the Technical Operations Center, the talk as we call it, is made. It is actually a national control room that is based in Rome, just near Rome ACC, where we have implemented 12 islands, as we call them, or sectors. Each one of them is specialized on a specific domain from the CNS and ATM environment. So we can see the communication and surveillance domain on the left, the ATM domain, two more sectors dedicated to communications. So for example, ENET, that is the ENAV wide area network. And on the right, you can see the navigation and meteorological domains, technological plants, the aeronautical operation information systems, and international control center. I skipped one on the left, that is the service desk, that is the central sector, which is the sector that collects all the faults coming from the systems and assign them to the specialist on the other sectors. In the Technical Operations Center, we have ATSAP engineers operating 24/7, and They work together to speed up the troubleshooting process and allow the resolution of the. Okay, I will try to speed up. These are just a couple of pictures to show you how it is made. There is a central video wall to display and share information amongst all the stakeholders. And here's other part of the model. This is the mobile team, because of course, not all systems can be reached by the Technical Operations Center. Some of them remain under the responsibility of airport and ACC teams. And we also have improved the model with some mobile teams that are specialized on communication, navigation, surveillance domains, and are spread on the territory to intervene where the fault, the technical problem, cannot be solved remotely by the Technical Operations Center. What are the key results we achieved? First of all, we can guarantee a higher level of systems availability. This was possible thanks to the reduction of intervention times and speed up the troubleshooting process, as I said, because we put all our best engineers in one control room, sharing all the information needed to solve the problem. We deployed a lot of technologies to improve the capability of the engineers to analyze and solve the problems from the center remotely, and also the introduction of predictive maintenance. What are the advantages over the traditional model? An increase of safety, the possibility to have a single point of contact, that is the service desk, that allow all the stakeholders to have one fast and single point of contact to understand where the problem is and what are the solutions that can be put in place, both on the technical and on the operational point of view. And we guarantee remote monitoring 24/7, as we said. And it also helped us to optimize the skill and the distribution of the personnel, since the model allowed us to implement a training program with more than 20,000 hours of training. Next scenarios, just to close. Some of them are already reality. For example, the implementation of drone, as I said, for the building monitoring and the use in the ILS weekly ground check. We are also implementing machine learning and generative AI to improve the business model. And in just one word, to implement and improve the maintenance concept. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fabrizio. I've had the pleasure and the opportunity to be a couple of times in your center. If you ever, guys, you're in the neighborhood of Rome there, don't hesitate to pay them a visit. It's one of, I think, one of the better setups that we see in Europe. What I also note again is this focus on the ATSEPs, on the workers, etc. We see the benefits of the centralization. And on one thing that you sort of mentioned at the very end is the machine learning. Again, something that we can fully rely to. Because of the NFIR, we do a lot of CNS monitoring. We're receiving terabytes of data, and we're using a lot of AI techniques nowadays to find the needle in the haystack, etc. We have a separate event on that called Fly AI Conference in 2 weeks' time, but that's a separate thing. Okay, thank you very much, Fabrizio. Then the last speaker, Manuel. Thank you very much also for being here. It's all fine and have all these industry initiatives and do better and maybe cheaper and all that, etc. But again, is it safe? Are we compliant? Is it certifiable, etc.? And for that, Manuel, very grateful for you to give us the highlights on that.
EUROCONTROL and all other sponsors and organizers of the conference. It's really a pleasure to be here with you today for this ICNS 2025 conference. Paul, you asked me to give a brief overview of the regulatory setup in Europe and what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. I know it's a challenging task that you put in front of me, and just to do that at the end of the panel, when probably all the participants are willing to go for a coffee, it will put a little bit more of pressure on me, but I will try to do my best. As it has been highlighted this morning by the opening speeches by Flor, by Maria Gracia, we are in a critical moment of change in aviation. In terms of connectivity, there are challenges, opportunities for the system to better enable the ambitions of the ATM Master Plan 2025 as approved. We have challenges in terms of trajectory-based operations, evolution towards trajectory-based operations, future connectivity, multiple challenges. And we together, from the perspective of the regulator, have an obligation, a responsibility to shape the regulation to enable this change. I will try to start with the foundation, how the system is organized in Europe. I hope this is more informative for the colleagues even from the other side of the Atlantic, and not too boring for the European colleagues, but just to highlight that all tasks for all aviation domains are established by the regulation 2018-1139, which is the basic regulation. And these tasks are about establishing rules, standards, performing certification approvals, oversight, international cooperation, safety management. I will move very quickly to what is relevant for CNS. When we look at our regulatory framework, we see 5 main building blocks that you can see on the screen, touching on the provision of ATM-ANS services, establishing common requirements for all service providers. Here today, we have had 4 presentations from 4 different organizations, different operational services, different projects trying to move forward with new services, improving the CNS performance. The common element in Europe is that the regulation that they would need to apply in terms of how to demonstrate safety, how to ensure that those systems and services are interoperable, is common for all organizations in Europe. ESSP for the EGNOS service, for IRIS, and also ENAF, both are certified service providers complying with the exact same set of requirements established by those regulations cascading from the EU basic regulation. We have those 5 blocks touching on air traffic controllers licensing, provision of ATM-ANS services, standardized European rules for the air, airspace usage requirements, which contain all those CNS obligations for the airborne equipment. So how aircraft need to be equipped to be able to fly into the EU airspace. And also we have the new kit in the block, which is the ATM ground equipment. This morning, Flor mentioned that the regulations, the interoperability regulations were transferred to the EASA framework. And this represents this 5th block you see on the screen. What is relevant for CNS are those 2 blocks, ATM ground equipment and provision of ATM services. Equipment is required to be fit for purpose to be installed. So equipment needs to be demonstrated as safe, interoperable before it can be installed into operations. And the provision of all ATM-ANS services, and concretely the provision of CNS services, is subject also to demonstration of compliance with a set of common requirements that all providers need to satisfy. And this is a requirement for those CNS services to be integrated by air traffic services providers in their service. When we look at the changes throughout the last years, we were trying to identify what lessons we can highlight for this conference. What are the challenges and opportunities? And before going there, although the text is already on the screen and you can read, but before going there, I would like to highlight that the framework for the equipment in Europe is based on 2 pillars. First of all, that the organizations involved in the design production of the equipment comply with a set of requirements and are approved to do that job, to design and produce equipment. And also that the equipment complies with a common set of requirements, what we call the detailed specifications that are introduced by the rule. When we look in more detail to the detailed specifications, we see that these stop at the level that they define functional, performance, interface requirements. They don't go into the how we achieve those elements. And there is where, and this is probably the key message I would like to pass today to you, This approach builds on the availability of industry standards. Industry standards are key in this framework to ensure that the equipment really satisfies all those functional performance interface requirements. So the lesson learned I would highlight is we need good, complete industry standards to make sure that we implement technology in a harmonized manner across the service provision chain. In terms of the challenges, I will probably repeat some of the messages we heard before. We need to keep up with evolving tech. We have seen a lot of novelties presented by my colleagues, my previous speakers. And there are huge challenges in terms of artificial intelligence coming, in general digitalization, which is even going beyond voice. It's presenting many more challenges. And there are opportunities, of course. These challenges, if we are able to reach those, the opportunities are that we will be able to enable new service delivery models. We will enhance the EU-wide market. And of course, aviation is also a global market, although we need to recognize the particular moment we are living through. And of course, we need to accelerate the adoption of all this novel technology. And this can only be done with proper and shared industry standards. In many cases, we have common standards developed in a joint manner by RTCA, EUROCONTROL, that apply to both sides of the Atlantic. And this is, I would say, always a very good point to start. And but again, industry standards are the key. And in this slide, I would just like to present a few questions for discussion, for debate. I will not go into them, but I would like to let you know that these are the kind of thoughts that in the rulemaking groups, or even the regulator, and discussions with the industry, discussions with the other European institutions, the SESAR JU, SDM, are questions that are always present on the table. How do we ensure that regulation can be both a safeguard? We need to ensure safety. We need to ensure interoperability, but also how can we ensure that regulator is an enabler of innovation? Is our regulatory framework future-proof enough? How can we accelerate the availability of industry standards to cater for innovation, to facilitate quick deployment of these innovative solutions? And with that, I would end my talk today. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Manuel, and thank you all for sort of staying within the time frame. We started with a 15-minute delay, and we are still sort of there. In terms for you, Floor, we've got one occasion to make a first impression. So we are the techies, yeah, but these are technical things, etc. So I hope you were still with us, so to say, on these topics, etc. But you see a very passionate community that is really trying its best to really move into the 21st century and really embrace the change that we need so desperately in ATM and CNS. Okay, with that said, I negotiated a couple of minutes of time with Nikos to allow for a couple of questions. So the floor is yours. Any questions for our fantastic speakers? Yes, Regula.
Good morning to all. Thank you very much for all these presentations. I'm the former chair of the performance and review body of the Single European Sky, and then you will probably know where I'm heading to with my question. We have planned, or European member states or CES member states have planned to invest 14 billion in the next 5 years, according to the draft performance plans. So that's a lot of money. And I really hope that some of the projects you are working on are among these investments. But can you give us an idea of what you expect in specific numbers in improving the key performance indicator that we apply here, but I'm sure they are very similar in the US, which is horizontal flight efficiency, capacity, and cost efficiency? What is ahead of us in terms of improvement? Because that's what airspace users really want to see. Thank you.
That's not a simple question. It's a bit of a loaded one. I'm looking at my speakers here to see if anybody is willing to pick up the, the one. Come on, John, I see you moving. Come on.
All right, so as the non-European of the group here, no, I mean, so here's a good example, right? So common data link services, procurement, and yes, we've got to navigate where that goes, but it gets a real opportunity to introduce more efficiencies in how the capacity is managed. This is what the US has been able to realize over the past almost 10 years now with the data link harmonization program that we also operate for the FAA. We're now fully rolled out on our en route services. So now we're starting to measure benefits of having en route CPDLC across the United States. The accessibility of how the airspace is managed, given more efficiencies in the digital communication. You know, we're not changing separation standards, but we're enabling greater access to the sky that is there, that we're making more efficient through new routings as well. So I think Europe, as they continue down the harmonization path, we'll start to see some efficiencies there.
Yep. And I'm sure Pierre would like to say one or two words about Iris.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. That's effectively a very good question. And if we think about high-risk service, for now, we are in a way in a different situation for which the main investment done on the last 10 years have been done by the industry or with the support of institutions like ESA. And the step forward to make it a sustainable service is quite limited compared to the previous investments, but of interest and benefit at the collective level. And so to answer to your question, it's very difficult for services or for infrastructure like IRIS or other communication infrastructure to effectively identify the part of benefits of technologies which will totally support the CP1 and the future of ATC with TBO and the usages of EPP data. Nevertheless, we clearly know the cost of not doing it. And today, for instance, with IRIS, not supporting the development and the adoption of IRIS at a collective level, thinking about INSPs, but also airlines, the cost is estimated at €1 billion per year of not being able to sustain the development of aviation.
Thank you very much. We could do a workshop on this topic, yeah? So, okay, any other quick questions from the audience? No, we've killed you with the slides. We've done it again. Or we're just very passionate and you're waiting for your coffee. Yes, please.
It's not a question just for my curiosity, more for the EASA representative, as from the EASA standpoint of view, they are viewing on the ATM-INS as a whole package. And our conference is only CNS domain. Are you going in the future, widen the conference to the ATM-INS systems?
I think the conference is having many different aspects. So I think that we do cover it's CNS ATM actually. So we do cover everything. So we're focusing on CNS, but we need to see all of them in the totality. But we'll discuss further for other sessions if you're interested.
Okay, with that.
And I would say I actually want to change the I. I want to add an I because I is information. And it's very different from communications. There's voice communications, but as part of the digitalization is information management. It has very different requirements and ties to your ATM-INS. So maybe we have
lots of suggestions around that. We have our cyber friends that want to add a C. Yeah, we have our spectrum people that want to add an S. I mean, there's no shortage of creativity around all this. So no, very good C. One last opportunity for anybody who wants to raise a quick question. If not, I'll seek to summarize the session. So what we see is that running CNS as a managed service clearly has benefits. I think that came out clear and loud from the different presentations, etc. We see some good examples, some lessons learned, some best practices in the US, but at the same time, we also see clearly European capabilities building up. be it with ESSP, be it with ENAV TechnoSky, but I know there are many others like you as well. So that's very good to see. I think the message really is that if we're going down this path further, it's partnership that is the key word. This is not a master-slave relationship. You need to manage that relationship, bring in the change culture that is so desperately required. And all of us, whether you are in the managed service provider or the one in the ANSP or whatever body you set up to manage it, you need to invest in digital workers, because we're only accelerating the digitalization. The AI again was mentioned, the cyber threats that come with it, etc. Common standards, a good regulatory framework around it that stimulates innovation. I mean, I'm coming back to you, Manuel, on that one. I think are key for the future. And with that, I would like to thank again our panel. Thank you very much for sharing all your insights. And we can go now to the coffee break. Thank you again.
So before going maybe to the coffee break, so what I would like to, sorry, maybe we go back to the slides. So there is actually, we talk a lot about training and these things. So tomorrow there will be actually a session. The last plenary session will be about training. And in the morning, we're going to have also cybersecurity. So really, please, we consider that we are late. So what I propose that we don't start in 10:55 as it is in the program. We do start at 11 o'clock. So you have 5 more times for the coffee break. And please also do take the time to go to the exhibits outside and see also the different sponsors. A big thank actually to our sponsors, and I will mention them one by one later. I'll give you some more time for the coffee break now. Thank you all.
What I heard is we're all in minutes.
Do we have somewhere this morning presentation?
So they will be available.
Technical
So they will be available in the EUROCONTROL event page, where is the live stream. There will also be the presentations. I think they may be uploaded already, the ones from yesterday, and today's will also be uploaded.
okay. So on Monday I'll find all of them on EUROCONTROL.
The ICNS event page.
Okay, thank you.
No one wanted to be on the
Claro, es que no es una sola posición, sino una cosa temporal, la mensajería, claro, cambia la hora, llegan los mensajes, una hora diferente, automáticamente.
Forgot to remove the plastic things.
Sí, además, sí, sí. Que hay ahí de... Sí, y el norte del sur de Turquía, pero que se suele llamar el GPS, pero tiene su propio replicarlo. Si compras pero hay unos relojes que reciben el GPS y reciben muchas señales y que tú no sin ser muy caro. Y este hace de servidores de si pierde la serie GPS durante meses, no es absolutamente nada. Porque el reloj interno está fuera, que deriva mínimo y él da los tiempos a pero puede hacer esto, cogerse la información directamente del GPS, porque es más. Es que no tiene sentido en España siempre se puede alimentar por la se podría, correcto, y lo suelta. Y eso irá funcionando sin problema. Cuando lleguen en serie, fichar el mismo horario y el ATP dirá dato del futuro, dato del pasado, lógico. Si ese pasaje tiene acceso a la red de comunicación, no haría falta que se conectara el servidor local. decisione che justamente el NTP está pensado para llegar en 15 segundos a través de redes. Lo que pasa es que normalmente no se monta porque no se necesita, pero si hay este tipo de cosas.
Otro NSP, no tiene la filosofía de tener una red de referencia única NTP.
Ya, para otro que no la tiene. Veamos que
Are we live?
Bear with us a few more minutes for the people on the live stream. We will be starting very soon. Can I please ask the people to take your seat? I think that we're about to start. Can I please ask all the people to try to take your seats? So I think that we are starting and the people are coming slowly in. So we did have actually to delay a bit. So sorry for impacting a bit the schedule. So I think that we are ready to start with the second plenary of the day. And I think this is also continuing on the same theme of the service provision. But now we're going to look at it from the satellite position. So I'm very happy to invite actually Vojislav Milosavljevic, who is going to lead actually the panel session on the space-based CNS services. Vojislav.
Thanks, Nikos. So hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here and to be honored to host our dear panelists and look more to detail into space-based CNS topics to see what's going on there. So this will be an interactive panel, so we'll be having our discussions over there rather than coming here to present. So to start, if we can see the slides, please.
You are going back. No, you're going back. This one.
Can this be our slide? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so today we'll be having with us Davide Tomasini from ESA, So he's got rather a telecommunication background, and he's been with ESA since 2019. And his next objective is to expand IRIS adoption beyond Europe. As you know, IRIS is a global system. Then we've got Ghislain Nicole. He's a vice president of air traffic services at Viasat. He's got a very rich and long experience, so more than 30 years in VHF, SATCOM, and believe me or not, even Phase 1 in implementing oceanic routes in South Pacific. Then we've got Miguel Munoz Martinez. He's the technical director of ITM Statical since 2021, if I'm not wrong, right? Yeah. And he's overseeing space-based VHF and IDSB solutions currently. He's also got very rich experience, so it's over 25 years, including SESAR 2020 contribution, EUROCONTROL, ICAO, and RTCA forums, of course. And last but not least, certainly, we've got Michael Garcia from Arion. He's a chief innovation scientist. Welcome, Mike. So he deals with company strategy and execution for space-based ADSB and VHF as well. So as well as system architecture and technical forums, again, RTCA and all standardizations. RTCA, of course, EUROCONTROL, ITU, NAS. And before joining Arion, he worked primarily on FAA, ADSB, and wide area multilateration projects in companies. Well. So those are our panelists. So to start, actually, as I said, this will be an interactive panel. So we really like to hear from you, to get your opinion. Feel free. So we'll start with a poll, the first one. And the question for today is, what is currently the single most needed satellite-based solution, in your opinion? So you'll see on this slide a couple of options. I'm not going to go one by one to all of them. You've got this QR code and the numerical code on the top of the slide. So you can log on to menti.com. You can vote there using your mobile devices or computer. We'll stay on the slide just a minute so you can actually log on to this Mentimeter. But please take your time because the vote will be open for 25 minutes and you can vote, you can change your opinion, so on. And in the meantime, I'll ask our esteemed panelists to present you a couple of slides. It will be just 1 or 2 slides per panelist, just to give you some flavor of what their companies do, what they have as services, and also, above all, their perspectives related to CNS, to space-based CNS. So, you know, just to start the discussion. And then we'll move on to discussion, see the results of the first poll, and then we've got another one, if I can spoil you already. And there will be some questions and answers. So if you've got any questions regarding presentations that our panelists will give, we'll we can address them just after all presentations. So I'm moving back to my seat. I'll give the stage to our panelists who will give their presentations from there. So.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody still. And I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me in this distinguished panel. I'm Davide Tomassini from ESA. I'm the IRIS project manager. So when I started preparing for this panel, I asked myself, but where is it that it all started with CNS? And I have to be open. I was not really sure when it started. So I did a little bit of homework and I found it very easily. It all started in early 80s. I think if I will remember, it was 1983, in which the ICAO Council stated that the current systems and procedures for civil aviation had reached their limit. And there was the need to establish a new special committee that at that time was called Future Air Navigation Systems. Here we go, funds. And very soon after that, this committee was later known as CNS ATM systems, involving complex and interrelated set of technologies depending largely on satellite. So this means that the message that I would like to pass is that already 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, there was already a clear need seen in the aviation community about CNS and about the critical role that satellites had to play in the CNS domain. But it goes beyond that, because here they used 40 years ago the word interrelated. To me, interrelated looks very much a synonym of integrated. So here we go, 40 years ago, the concept of integrated CNS with a strong role from satellites was already there in the picture. Now, how did we evolve from there? Well, let me start with a joke. I mean, life on Earth started in the oceans. That's the same for CNS via satellite. It started in the oceans, of course, not in the oceans, above the oceans. But I would say that since then, a lot of progress has been made in the oceans. Funds are really well deployed in oceans regions. And I would say that all the three legs of CNS, C, N, and S, are implemented with the key support of satellite systems, of course, Viasat and Iridium for the C part, navigation, of course, there is GNSS, also Iron for the S part. So a lot of progress. What else could be done there? Of course, there is space. I use intentionally the word space for improvements there. And I'm sure we will hear more during this panel on that topic. But on my side, I would say TBO would be something for sure that we need also to look in the oceanic areas. Let's now move to the continental part. Here, the progress has been slower and more complex for many reasons, fragmentation, sovereignty, and so on. And probably there are many more. And I would say that this was particularly the case for the communication leg of the CNS. And that's why ESA has invested more than 10 years ago, as Pierre from ESSP mentioned very nicely during the previous panel, in the IRIS project, in the IRIS program. And today we have a fully certified and operational data link via SATCOM in Europe, with the objective to consolidate user adoption in Europe and extend it worldwide. What about N and S? Well, I would say that we were doing relatively okay there until the jamming and the spoofing started. And it was mentioned this morning very clearly and very strongly. This is now a real issue. This is now a real issue. And so what are we doing there? I think that space solution can again help to solve this problem. There are many initiatives ongoing. On ESA side, I can mention two major ones. One is EURIALO, that was again already mentioned by ESSP this morning, to provide a completely independent GNSS service for surveillance. So this is a service which is completely independent from GNSS. If you want more technical info, of course, we can discuss during the questions or later on. But what I would like really to stress is that it's a completely independent from any GNSS a service. And regarding the N, our colleagues in the navigation directorate of ESA, but this is an initiative that is also going on, I would say, worldwide, not only at ESA. They're very much working on the LEO PNT concept by providing additional constellations in low orbit that will augment the existing constellations. The first satellites will be launched very soon, and there will be very soon a demonstrator. So via this low Earth constellation, it will be possible to increase the resiliency quite significantly. What else for the satellites? Well, of course, in the future, not very near, but also not very far away, there is hyperconnected ATM. Satellites will play a strong role in the hyperconnected domain. And this is also something which ESA is very much active with several initiatives, some within the IRIS program and some outside of the IRIS program. And then last but not least, I would say that in the long term, in the future, we have to start thinking about a different concept. And the concept is the concept of systems. We should start to think about an integrated space-based system of systems delivering CNS in an optimized way. So far, CNS are quite addressed in I wouldn't say 100% in an isolation way, but mostly. It would be nice in the future to consider a system of systems handling them under one single umbrella. And before I finish, I would just like to throw a small mine into the field, a little provocation. Of course, this is now ICNS, integrated CNS, but very soon the challenge will be to have an integrated airspace. Drones are coming. And with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Davide. So we'll move on to Ghislain.
Here we go. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for inviting us. For this panel discussion. Been very interested with the previous panels, with the various discussions. So I'm going to try to keep that short and concise and try to avoid repeating what other panelists have been saying so far. But what I wanted to bring to you, I'm working for Viasat. Obviously, we have been in this business for the past 30 years, since inception of the FANS concept, and we have been supporting that activity so far quite successfully, I believe. There are, however, a number of key challenges that we are sharing in common with the rest of the industry. I've got a number of things which really we have in common with aviation industry. Speaking for the satellite industry, we are facing long development cycles. It takes a lot of time to develop a new constellation, to put that up in the air, to launch the satellites, and we are heavily regulated as well. Spectrum is not a resource that is available freely. We in the aviation world, of course, there is some spectrum protection, but I will come back to that. We are a very capital-intensive industry, cost a lot of money to launch satellites. And in order for us to provide services to the aviation safety community, we have no other choice than sharing those resources: spectrum, satellites, and ground infrastructure. So this to say that capital investment is really a key challenge for us as we are developing our business and our activities. I heard Hugues, for instance, mentioning yesterday that the business needs to be profitable. That's very true. One of my former boss told me, you are lucky you are in this industry. It's very good. It's very creative at inventing new concepts and never implementing them. Good luck. That was his words, literally. So I said, okay, fine, let's have a try. And we implemented FANS 1A. We have now implemented IRIS, and we're looking forward for new concepts like hyperconnected ATM. But my message here is that we all should be wary about the key challenges in financial terms. That brings me to spectrum management. We do not face an issue of spectrum capacity in the satellite world. Right now, we have made some studies which we shared with EUROCONTROL as part of the FCI study, which is showing clearly that we have enough capacity to support air traffic growth until the 2040 at least. If we complement that with hyperconnected ATM, I think we'll still be there by 2100, say. So capacity, satellite capacity is not so much an issue. Where the issue is on spectrum protection. Spectrum is a scarce resource, as you know, with competing priorities and competing end users. Everybody wants to have access to that resource. And when it gets to the industry or to a private organization, we need to arbitrate to make choices between which business is better for us than the other, just to speak bluntly. Thanks to our legacy in aviation safety, we have been able to mature our services, to implement the next generation of CNS or communication capabilities in that case, and effectively manage our spectrum and allocate. We've got some allocation as well coming from ICAO for MSRS, as you know, that we are using for that purpose. But this to say that spectrum, again, is a resource that is scarce, And there are various verticals that are effectively looking at what they could be doing using this capacity. So that's something that needs to be highlighted. I was pleased to hear from the European Commission that there is action ongoing vis-à-vis ICAO and ITU to protect that spectrum. We are fully supportive of that. Global interoperability, just to take back the words of Greg Sakone yesterday from Boeing, was saying we cannot afford incompatible regional solutions. Totally true. If we have got to implement various protocols depending on the region and looking at various requirements separately, the cost is simply going to explode. It's going to become unaffordable, the provision of those services. So really for us, looking the way forward, satellite is a global infrastructure that can be shared among various users. We can effectively implement specific requirements which are very specific to this industry. That's what we're doing every day. But we need to keep asking ourselves the question about what is the most efficient manner of managing these assets, satellite, spectrum, ground infrastructure. Last but not least, sovereignty. Sovereignty is important. I mean, we need to comply by the law, of course, but it's got a trade-off. It depends where we put the limit. In the aviation world is by nature, by definition, an open world, basically enabling exchanges across the planet. And effectively, that goes together with interoperability, with harmonization, with all these aspects. For us, it's very key that we, on the one hand, comply with the regulation and make sure that we provide safety services in line with those regulations. And effectively, thanks to our partner ESSP, we have implemented that has been certified by EASA. That's a good way forward. But again, there is a trade-off. Where do we put the bar? How do we address those multiple requirements coming from different regions of the world, etc.? I think in Europe, we are leading effectively the implementation of the ATN OSI, or say the future communication standards, and that's quite key. For us, I mean, our wish, it's more than a wish actually, for us it makes sense only if this is adopted worldwide. It's as simple as that. When we deploy a capability on our network, we do that globally, across the planet. And it would be a pity if what we're doing in Europe cannot be used elsewhere. So that is finishing my short presentation. Of course, I mean, this could last for a day, but I had only 5 minutes. I don't know whether I've been doing well, but anyway. To you.
Thank you. Okay, so again, thank you very much for hosting us in this wonderful event. My name is Miguel Muñoz. I work for Statical since 2021 because it is when we created the company, but we started to think on this some years before. I like to start normally my presentations asking, we will ask many questions during the presentation. The first question is why we need new constellations for air traffic management. And I like to show this picture we have normally in the left to show that the distribution of communication and surveillance systems is not the best that we could achieve. And this discontinuity in the systems, in the coverage, is leading to inefficiencies in the services we are providing. And this is making that the air traffic management finally is not managed properly, which is translated into delays, into cost, into loss of safety in some cases, which is not acceptable, I will say. In particular, we have the situation in surveillance. In some papers yesterday, we mentioned that when satellite-based systems are passing through Europe, it is very difficult to get the level of performance we can achieve for surveillance. We have some areas in Europe that are illuminated more than 20, 30 radars, and in other cases, in other areas, like Africa, for instance, we don't have any coverage, not ADSB, not modest radars, because it is impossible to deploy anything there because it doesn't remain there for long. And the same thing appears with communications. Communications are very variable. We have a very big problem in Europe with the VDL2 communications, with the channels, and in other parts of the world, it is not used at all. So we see this situation is unbalanced at all cases, and we think that the use of space-based CNS services can improve this situation. Moving to To the future, I will say, or to the past, depending on how we see it, in the right part of the slide, we see the evolution of the CNS services. We started with ground-based CNS services deployed a long time ago with line of sight restrictions because they were ground-based. Then we jumped to some systems located in MEO constellations like the GNSS. We jumped to GEO constellation or LEO constellation for the SATCOM, Iridium or Inmarsat. But all these systems share something in common, that has been using a constellation that hasn't been designed for ATM, hasn't been designed for air traffic management purposes. So they are giving very good services, but in the end, we cannot take the best from these systems because these systems are not based in a constellation specifically designed for ATM. And we think this is the really next turn in the wheel that we need to do, to design a constellation specifically for air traffic management purposes that can fit the necessities we have in terms of performance, interoperability, and so on. We think this is the next case we need to address, and the next opportunity we need to take, because it's also a good opportunity for the air traffic community. Okay, we follow with the questions. How can we increase the penetration of space-based CNS services? I will say that the first thing is to ensure interoperability. We need to be consistent with the system we have already deployed in other parts of the world, in continental and in remote aerospaces. So we need to consider that when we are designing this new constellation or new services to be deployed in the space. Second point is to make more agile the regulation of the regularization process. We have the example for the space-based VHF. We started to work on this in 2019. We did a lot of work to make the acceptance of the space-based VHF services from space in World Radio Conference 2023. And it was very hard to do this. And right now we are working also with other colleagues in ICAO to push for this regulation to happen. We have a goal that is 2028, yeah. and we are fighting for this. So we need to help also ICAO and the EASA and the rest of the regulators to do this work, all the air traffic management community. And also another way to increase the penetration is the demonstration projects. As an example, we have this EUROCONTROL project you were referring before for space-based multilateration. And we have another demonstration project that is the ECOS project from SESAR and CNEA, in which we are going to do some real-time VHF voice communications and data communications in the South Atlantic corridor this summer. So I encourage you to see what is happening in this project. And it's a very good way to start deploying this kind of new systems in space. And as a conclusion, I will say that we need to take this train. We need to take the train of the LEO constellations, because it's a good way to deploy systems worldwide. We have to consider that the deployment of this constellation is not so high in cost at GEO satellites, for instance. Not making anything bad about GEO satellites, of course, but deploying LEO constellation is much easier, much simple, and we have to take this train. I think it's a good train for everybody. It's all for me.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Garcia from Arion. Thank you so much to EUROCONTROL for hosting us. Thank you to the chair for organizing this committee, and for the organizers of the conference. It's very much my pleasure to be here and to be with these esteemed colleagues from the industry talking about space-based comm, nav, and surveillance solutions. We're fortunate to be in this space. It's very exciting. We've been excited about it for a long time. And of course, these gentlemen sitting next to me have as well. It's a passion for all of us. And we're all looking at a combination of technologies, challenges, and opportunities. We're just trying to frame it in that space, looking at each of the different pillars of ATM for comm, nav, and surveillance. So starting with navigation and surveillance, this is really from the space or satellite-based perspective. And starting with the navigation side, of course, you have GPS and GNSS as the core foundation for navigation from the satellite perspective. And that really is kind of the medium with which all the aircraft are primarily using for navigation. But they, of course, have backup systems on board as well for inertial and DME and other things as they traverse their flight paths. You have augmentation systems from space, SBAS systems that enhance the overall navigation solutions on board the aircraft that can also be useful in terms of providing those solutions. On the surveillance side, there's definitely a dependency between the surveillance and the navigation systems. That's the D in ADSB, right? It's dependent on navigation in order to thrive. And so for space-based ADSB, as we are a service provider of that with 66 payloads on Iridium X constellation, we're constantly monitoring the ADSB messages all over the world. And we have some challenges as we traverse the space from both the navigation as well as the 1090 perspective. And that's something that we constantly are searching for solutions and for understanding the patterns that emerge on a daily basis. Multilateration was mentioned by Miguel as well, and that is something that we have been working on for quite some time. Even with the standards group itself, with 142A, we first participated in EUROCONTROL for 129, Bravo, and now Charlie. And then now, of course, working on 8142A to help finalize that multilateration standard. We're a standard-centric organization, and I think it's important for space-based providers to be, engaged in standards. We don't want to be different from ground-based systems. Most of us came from ground-based system technologies, and we want to see it the two interact. So I think sometimes people think there's this mutual exclusivity between the ground and the space, but really we see a collaboration, a cooperation, an interoperability that needs to happen between those types of systems. Challenges, as were mentioned many times, between RF jamming and spoofing on the navigation side, which affects surveillance. And we see the spoofing in particular has grown as a problem over time. We monitor this, and we have seen some of these things in very interesting ways. And we really hope to be able to provide solutions back to the community to help understand it and mitigate it as well. So from the space-based side, the opportunities we can provide significantly augment ground-based coverage for nav and surveillance. Newer navigation systems offer the opportunity for multi-mode GNSS receivers, and hopefully there are even more solutions for that. Iridium, for example, is coming out with a solution with Satellus to try to help also provide another layer. You think about safety as layers of the Swiss cheese, and so adding more layers is what really helps make the system for aviation as a whole more robust. And multilateration is another way to mitigate some of the navigation challenges and ADSB challenges that are apparent. Reference track, as Giuseppe's paper yesterday, which we're grateful to receive accommodations for. That's another way for us to try to help mitigate some of the surveillance challenges that we've seen. And I think I'm a proponent for making regular updates to the standards to make sure that they catch up with the state of affairs in the ATM community. Moving on to communication, we have VHF, as Miguel mentioned, space-based VHF, and it's great that we have the pioneers of this in this room today with us, and that is really something that I see as an exciting new technology that's going to help provide yet another blanket of coverage for the CNS domain. We have navigation, we have surveillance, and now adding communication will really help open up the airspaces. And as Miguel said, try to restore some balance where there's imbalances between usage and gaps. And there are many aspects to that as well. There, of course, COM has been a satellite service for some time with Iridium and Inmarsat and others that have been providing ADS-C-based services for communication, critical part of the infrastructure. But challenges with that are many. I won't get into too many of them now. These are really just ideas to leave on the table, and certainly looking to have the conversation with everyone in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. So now, before we move to the results of the first poll, we would be glad to take some of your questions quickly, whether online, whether in the room. If anybody has got any questions for our day panelists. Go ahead, yeah.
Hi, Paul Roux, SATORS. You earlier were talking about a completely new GNSS constellation related to coverage. That is clearly something you're going to have to build or have a completely separate application. And also with regards to your infrastructure, about Africa, not having the equipment on the ground for long enough to utilize. I appreciate that we are from Africa, so just as a heads up, that does happen. So this constellation and how's it going to be affected, and who's going to be funding the new constellation for the ATM functionality as a separate function? It's just a question. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's pertinent to what I was saying about LEO PNT. So this is the idea is to have an additional constellation in low Earth orbit satellite, in low Earth orbit type of satellites to augment the existing ones. So basically, by having additional satellites from different orbits much closer to the Earth and using different types of frequencies, you have a combination that makes it much more difficult jamming and spoofing. And of course, this requires also some terrestrial infrastructure, but that's a given. That's normal. And I was saying that ESA is very much in the front line. Actually, it's not my directorate of communication; it's our colleagues in the navigation directorate that are doing that. And I think that we will have soon the first 10 satellites in orbit to demonstrate the functionalities and to demonstrate the features, with the first one, if I well remember, to be launched within this year. Now, on the African side, I mean, I don't think that much investment will be required there on the ground. It will just be that you need receivers capable to use also this additional constellation.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Hugo.
Merci. Hugues de Becco, Airbus. As an airframer contributing to the overall ATM, I have always a question, which is behind the current vision, what should we do as small pieces of aircraft to implement the different proposals? So regarding communications, we have a plan for continental airspace. As Davide mentioned in the beginning, the segmentation of the ATM operation is rather simple. It's simplistic, but it's true. It started in oceanic and it is now in continental. Here I am referring to data link. This being said, in continental dense areas, everything is relying on VHF. And the scarce of the VHF is leading to a problem. We were talking about that yesterday, which is the VHF saturation. And without the VHF, then we will forget about the data link, and it will have a real effect on the efficiency of the system. And we have a plan, which is to continue to improve the VHF as we are using it differently, to implement the second generation of satellite communication thanks to IRIS. And there is, in the research, thanks to SESAR, a third generation with two different technologies, LDAX and hyperconnected ATM. From a European continental airspace, the focus is the continental airspace. So this being said, how do you envisage to continue to improve airline flight routing with VHF-based communication? What is the relationship between the current plan that we have and the idea, which is very well explained and very good on the paper? What will be the value? Because this will be the question that my customer will ask.
I will try to reply. It's not an easy question, but thank you for it. Our approach is that VHF communications are there, has been there for a long time, and we think that is not the goal of the evolution of the communication systems in Europe, particularly. So, in our point of view, there should be a plan for evolution of the communication systems, FCDI, different multilinks. We are not against about that for sure. What we want to do is to extend the use of VHF communications in other parts of the world. Not like Europe, they are not so busy and they don't have the needs that Europe has. For sure, from the point of view of the islands, other links will be needed, like the ones you are saying in Europe, and we are sure that this is the future. But the future will take in aviation maybe 15, 20, 30 years, you never know. And during that time, there is a lot of evolution to be done in VHF. This is how we see it.
If I can add, certainly I think there are a lot of things that will be revealed by trials and by testing and by working collaboratively with organizations such as EUROCONTROL, with the EASA, with ANSPs along the way as a partner to try to make sure we're approaching this the right way. None of us want to come in and have a negative impact on the environment. We want to extend it, we want to improve it, we want to globalize it so that it's ideally a seamless transition from one type of airspace to another so that the aircraft is always connected in whichever manner is most suitable for its operation.
And if I can add as well, I mean, for us, I mean, we don't see, we frequently oppose VHF with satellite-based communication, SATCOM. I think we need to realize that the performance are very different. And we need to use those data links for what they can best support. SATCOM has got a higher latencies than VHF, so it's probably more appropriate for en route usage than for terminal usage. But definitely, I mean, what we're looking at is a way to get that working in a complementary fashion. I believe that's the meeting concept, so that effectively we can maximize the use of existing assets to get started. And then effectively, as you mentioned, new technology at some stage will replace what exists today. But at least we need to make use of what we have.
Hi, I'm Hannes, I'm a CGI, and I'd like to issue a statement in support of this article. For those of you who don't know, I'm the guy who came up with the idea of space-based VHF 12 years ago. It's a long time. Anyway, and the motivation back in the day is the same, I think, as it is today. And we haven't heard those. So the operations you do with, so it's a couple of points. The first one, the operations you do over SATCOM voice are entirely different to how they work over VHF. Those of you are pilots, I'm just a private pilot, but it applies the same, I suppose, is that through the listening to broadcast voice gives you a situational awareness, and all our procedures today are built around that situational awareness. That's not easy to change. The second factor is, and that hasn't changed in the past 12 years either, is that there's a lot of equipment operating out there, particularly in remote areas, that just isn't suitable for SATCOM upgrades. And the last thing I'd like to mention is changing airspace and procedures, etc., is not just a regulatory challenge, it's also a practical implementation challenge, because you always need to make sure that every participant can be served. And therefore, I think space-based VHF, I stand behind that idea, and I hope this article will be successful with this, because I think it's a game changer, particularly for areas such as the Pacific Islands, for which many years ago I did an airspace design based around the availability of space-based VHF in conjunction with the availability of Ariane, by the way. Ariane was involved back in the day, yes. And things haven't changed dramatically. And what that allows people to do is, in fact, provide remote ATM services to areas that are currently underserved, but they don't lend themselves well to set up massive ATM infrastructure. So I think there's a huge potential here, and I hope that this article will be successful, and we'll be watching you with continued interest. Because the last point I haven't mentioned, there were a couple of naysayers back in the day that I'd really like to stick it to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maybe just to complement a little bit, I fully share your points about the voice, but there is another element, which is the data link, which is the CPDLC, ADSC, which is also fundamental. And there I think that SATCOM has already proven that fully meets all the required performances and that it enables trajectory-based operations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we're, yeah, go ahead, Nikos.
So maybe with a different hat, actually. I'm chairing the ICAO group on the SATCOM standards. So it was actually in 2003 that we put a satellite in what we call then FCI. We devised this wonderful name FCI, Future Communication Infrastructure. And we said that we need terrestrial, but of course we need satellite solutions. We are now 2025. So the question is why satellite has not penetrated sufficiently. So I know that is a big question, so very short answers to help also other answers. What do you think are the big obstacles, and why we didn't manage to have the expected penetration of the satellite systems and services in 2025? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that one. Thank you for this difficult question. Now, I would say very simply, I mean, cost is a big issue. You need to invest as an airline. I mean, basically, you need to equip your aircraft. There is an implementation cost that needs to be put in the picture. I think the main reason why penetration is not higher is because it's difficult to see the value. It's difficult to see the benefits. There was this question this morning by this lady regarding, I mean, what do I get for my money? I mean, we are investing a lot of money, but at the end of the day, it's very hard to see effectively the actual benefits coming up. That's the reason why we are insisting on making use of what exists today to deliver those benefits, maybe not all of them, but at least start delivering some sensible benefits to the end users so that they can see the justification to equip their aircraft.
Yeah, maybe just to complement a little bit, I would say the following. Of course, we know that in aviation, in particular for safety of life services changes, they take always a lot of time by default. So it's not easy to have changes. But what I would expect is that now having a service which is really operational and is delivering according to the performances, that the ramp up will be much faster in the coming years. That would be my expectation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Davide. Thank you for this this very interesting session Q&A. Yeah, go ahead. Anyone else, please?
Hello, Laura Bickmeyer from MIT Lincoln Lab. Just a question. I think one of you mentioned that you don't want these services to be seen as different from ground-based. However, they are on satellite and the signal does take longer to get down to the ground. So what are your solutions for mitigating that going forward so that they might be seen as the same as ground-based?
I could start with that perhaps. Yeah, so the latency is actually one of our best technical performance metrics. So the requirement from the EUROCATROL standards is 1.5 seconds, maybe 1 second. We're operating with about 300 milliseconds, 99th percentile. So latency is quite good for the Iridium constellation, at least, as that's our backbone, that's our transport layer, and it was built for voice communications. So that really helped ensure that our ADS-B data traverse that same pathway with pretty much no bottlenecks to the end user. The challenges for space-based providers in the surveillance domain are more along the lines of congestion, right? So the 1090 megahertz interference, as well as navigation interference that makes it more difficult for ADS-B on the aircraft itself to function properly and thus provide the surveillance as a service. So those are sort of the more challenging aspects of it from space. It's the same challenge on the ground, I would say, right? You have congestion of 1090 megahertz and GNSS interference from the ground as well, but we see it globally. So we see the patterns in different places and emerge in one place and then migrate to another. And so that's kind of more what I was referring to, is that there's still a collaboration, a cooperation between ground-based systems and space-based systems to exchange data and exchange services and ultimately provide both, I think, to the end users.
And maybe just to complement it with a real example of integration, because of course latency is important, but when we get to the data link, CPDLC and ADS-C and so on, the latency requirements are different. They can be met also with geostationary satellites. The example that I wanted to say is that in IRIS we have developed this dual link solution in which IRIS is complementing the current terrestrial VDL Mode 2, and this is done in a completely transparent way for the users. So the messages, they go through IRIS, and when IRIS is not available, they go in a transparent automatic way via VDL Mode 2 and vice versa. So I think that your question allowed me the opportunity to highlight this example for a nice integration, which is already fully operational and certified.
Thank you. So thanks to this very interesting discussion and questions and answers. We're just behind the schedule, so we'll have to move on. Just before we move on, one last question for our dear panelists. Speaking of IRIS, So question rather to Viasat and ESA. What is your strategy? What is your view when it comes to adoption of IRIS in the continental part of the European airspace? How do you see adoption on regional aircraft, on continental short haul aircraft? Okay, if you can say something.
Thank you for this question. The service is available, it's operational now. So really, it's more a matter of making sure, we can talk about incentivization and things like this, but making sure that airlines are equipped and that ANSPs are taking advantage of the technology to support new services like TBO, as mentioned by Davide. If this is happening, then there is no doubt that there will be adoption from the market to basically airlines to equip their aircraft, because they will see tangible benefits coming up. As a complement, of course, SATCOM continues to support AOC types of communications, EFB, and all these. There is a technology shift happening these days, moving from the ACARS-based environment to an IP-based environment. That support the case, but there is no single, say, killer application per se that justify for the investment. So effectively, collaboration is key, as we said before, and achieving benefits earlier rather than later is key as well.
Yeah, maybe just to complement on the IOC part that Ghislaine has mentioned, which I think it's key. We cannot separate the AOC business from the ATM business, because the AOC business is an important part of the game. With IRIS, with the hardware of IRIS, you get both. You get the AOC, and airlines are already procuring what is called the LCS terminal, not only in Europe, but also in several places of the world. And this is because the AOC business on its own is already sustainable because of that. Then IRIS comes with a software upgrade to be able also to use ATNOSI, CPDLC, and ADSC, and so on. So at the end of the game, when you look at the cost of IRIS, you have to look at the cost of the operational cost of IRIS, because a lot of it is already covered by AOC, in my opinion. I know that this is a hot topic, and maybe there is a little bit of confusion there. But in terms of operational costs, we are really talking less than €3 per flight in Europe in average. These are the operational costs. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, David. Yeah, sorry, one last question, and then we'll have to move on. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Konstantinos Simiakis. I'm coming from IFACEA. I would like to ask Mr. Tomasini, who said that another constellation of LEO are going to be deployed. And I would like to ask if they have in mind how they will manage the debris that will be created in long term, provided that we have already low orbit constellations like Iridium and so on. And I think that in a few years, we will not be able to, probably we'll face a problem with the trash on the space. And if there is any thought, how they will manage all this trash in the long term. And the second question, if I may, is that all this, as Mr. Nicole said, is aiming at profit. This, of course, will increase the cost of in aviation community. The lady this morning said that 16% is already huge cost. Yeah, I wonder if there is other thoughts behind aiming at reducing the cost in the long term, except the minimum operating network, which is considered or is expected to be quite prolonged. Thank you very much.
Maybe, thank you for the question. Maybe I will start only with the space debris, and then I will leave it to my colleagues for the rest. Maybe also EUROCONTROL with the CNS program manager could fit in this question. For the space debris, I can only say you very simply that we at ESA, the European Space Agency, we take it very seriously. And I know that there are a lot of initiatives and a lot of big programs looking at how to reduce the space debris. I work in the communication directorate, so I cannot, unfortunately, I cannot give you more details on that other than it's a very valid point, which is taken very, very seriously at the European Space Agency.
I guess on the question of cost again, we are there to support air traffic growth. I mean, traffic is growing, basically it's doubling every 20 years or so, I mean, roughly speaking. And effectively, there is a need to upgrade the existing infrastructure to support more aircraft coming in and more travel, etc. So I think instead of looking at purely the cost aspects, I mean, we need to look at the total cost of ownership and effectively at the return on investment, which is a cost benefit analysis that is being performed. Again, I think that there was this exercise last year conducted by EUROCONTROL. I think it's a permanent one related to the FCI business case. And as I remember it, the business case was positive. So really, if we look at it from that angle, yes, maybe there will be a cost increase, but this needs to be compared with, again, the benefits and what the evolution, say, of air traffic management in Europe and in the rest of the world as well.
Okay, thank you. So I'm very sorry, but we have to hurry up. We're behind schedule, so I'd like to move on and have a look at the results of our poll. Could you please display the slides? Thank you. So the results are safety air ground data leading, followed by GNSS independent surveillance, GNSS improvements. So just quickly, if anyone could say maybe a couple of words on why safety air ground data, those that voted for safety air ground data, just 10 seconds, a couple of words, why this, why not any other solution? Okay, so yeah, just quickly.
Yeah, I don't think this is a big surprise. I mean, as was highlighted previously, VHF is congested in some areas, not everywhere, but in some areas. And this has a knock-on impact on effect on the entire system. The system operates globally, as you know, and if you get the weakest link is basically what determines the overall performance of the system. I'm not surprised this is effectively coming up as a first, but GNSS as well, I mean, is as well a very important topic. So it's, I guess that was a multiple choice, right?
Okay, thank you, Gisela. So just to hurry up a bit, we'll move to the poll 2. If you can show us the poll 2 and questions. So again, we'd like to have your opinion on what short-term action you consider that would contribute the most to the overall end-to-end implementation of space-based CNS services. When we say end-to-end, the idea is to say from actually its development until its operational use, including development, I mean, research, development, industrialization, certification, adoption, everything included. So you might find that there may be several things that we need that could contribute. And here the question is, if you had to choose, what would be the single most important? So you have to choose just one. So we'll just stay on this slide for a minute to have your votes.
Just thought I'd comment on it as the poll is evolving. It's interesting to see mature, simplified regulation as the #1. Certainly one we think about a lot. We went through a process to become certified by EASA as an air navigation service provider some time ago. And it was a really enlightening process that helped us understand how to build that SMS culture. I think one of the other panelists mentioned that before. I think it's John, that we had to adopt that. We had to bring those practices in-house. Many of us had experienced it in different organizations before, but it really had to become part of the fabric of our organization in order to make sure we could have a good relationship with our regulator, EASA, our chosen regulator, and try to use that as the regulations evolve. The regulations are evolving, in particular with the Part IS security regulation is one thing that we're taking a close look at because it's going to affect our current system as well as our future systems. And so we need to make sure that it's a reasonable approach and that we're able to meet those requirements and regulations when they come out. And I think EASA, from our understanding, wants the same thing. They also want to make sure they're not putting something out that cannot be met or is gold plated. And that's so it's of interest between the regulatory and industry and ANSP that we're all in alignment there, I think.
Right, thanks, Mike. I'll just like to add that again, we see regulation as a top matter here, as we could hear yesterday and today by some other panelists. So that's probably a challenge that we have to keep in mind. Thanks for your votes. We'll move on. So we'll do a short wrap up of this panel. So I'd like to ask our day panelists for your final thoughts in just one sentence quickly before we wrap up, if you like.
I may, yeah. Oh, if I may, just to thank you again for the panel, very interesting. I see that there is a lot of questions and people are interested. I would like to say that we need to take this opportunity to start working on the development of new CNS services. There are technical challenges. In the case of VHF communication, we are facing a lot of technical challenges. We are speaking about a lot in the community about the Doppler effect, how to compensate the Doppler effect using LEO constellations. We are speaking on ADS-B about different topics, but it is only technical. I will say that we industry are willing to advance in the development of this kind of systems. And for us, the most complicated part is always the politics, the regulation, the standardization, and to work on time to develop the standardization. As my colleagues were saying before, in the space, we have capacity. What we don't have is spectrum. We have a spectrum that is limited. And if we don't use it properly in the space, it may be lost. So it's something that we have to consider for the future.
Okay, no, thank you. I mean, this has been very good panel discussion and as well very good 2 days so far. I mean, so I'm looking forward for the continuation of the conference. The last poll, I mean, reflects, I believe, some of the discussion that we had. Regulation effectively is key. We should not forget that we're talking about safety of life. Lots of discussions around services, lots of discussions around cost, pricing, etc. I think it's not only a matter of money. Effectively, we should not forget that our first and prime mandate is to enable aircraft to fly and operate safely in the most safely manner, and not lose sight of that. I think some of the comments made in previous sessions are quite enlightening, effectively, as mentioned before. And I think we should continue working together to implement, to execute what the plan, the CNS evolution plan that has been developed by EUROCONTROL as a network manager and supporting the ATM master plan here in Europe. I mean, this is really critical, I believe, and I cannot emphasize more that the sooner we start, the better we are.
Very quickly, I think it was not mentioned a lot, but in my view, the way to go is, it was mentioned yesterday, it was mentioned in other panels, the way to go is the multi-link approach and performance-based approach. So any technology which has the required performances is more than welcome to be considered and to be implemented in a multi-link fashion. And then, of course, incentives are also important. They can facilitate adoption and break a lot of barriers quite efficiently. And I said it at the beginning, maybe food for thought for next time. I think that drones are coming, so there will be need for discussions about integrated airspace going one dimension beyond the integrated CNS. unless it was already included in integrated ICNS and I was not aware of it. Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot for very, very nice panel and very nice 2 days so far.
Yes, just to echo my colleagues, thank you again to the chair. It's a great panel, good discussion. Thanks to the audience for the good questions and for addressing the polls. Maybe just 2 comments. I'd say from my perspective as a space-based service, it takes a village. It takes a village to help make a satellite service come to life and to be operational and to be healthy as a system. It takes all of us in this room to make that happen, because otherwise we cannot justify the business case. We cannot justify how we continue to improve the system over time in order to provide benefits back to the community. So it's a 2-way investment between all of us. I first heard about space-based ADS-B at the ICNS conference in 2012. So just to complement this conference and how it brings new innovative ideas to the table. And when I first heard that, I thought there's no way that's going to work. And then I went back to my office and started working on back of the envelope to figure it out and thought, well, actually, maybe it will. And so that was really, for me, the beginning of that. And so bringing what you all do for CNS to space, I think is exciting. And I encourage you all to think about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So one last comment from my side before we finish, because I guess you're becoming hungry a bit. So as we could see yesterday, and based on discussions that we could hear today, I'd just like to make one last link to our CNS program manager role and all the efforts that we're bringing here to optimize European CNS. So I'm hoping be able to display some slides. Let's see if they work. Yeah, so I'll just say it anyway. So I just like to remind that we're having our work streams. We like to call them work streams ongoing in our CNS PM function. So basically, I invite all of you, whether you have any comments, suggestions, constructive, thoughts, join us. Come and join us to discuss ground data, ground data, navigation, surveillance. We've got dedicated work streams for those purposes. And the overall objective is to build the next version of the evolution plan 2026. So we take into account all of your concerns, suggestions, so on. So let's be in touch. Let's share our thoughts. Also, I'd like to highlight that we've got the CNS Evolution course planned at Aviation Learning Center in Luxembourg, EUROCONTROL Center, of course, which is scheduled on 24th to 28th of November this year. So save the date, 24th of November. Also, we'll be, we actually started already writing a CNS Evolution report for 2025. Its main objective is to say where we are today, where we are based on CNS evolution plan that was written last year. So stay tuned. It will be published by the end of the year anyway. Also, you can find more about CNS Program Manager on the internet. We published some articles in the ERA magazine, and we made a podcast, internal EUROCONTROL podcast with Predrag. So have a look. And of course, keep in touch. Really, feel free to reach out if you've got any other concerns. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for our dear panelists, especially those that have come a long way, from very far away. Thanks for being with us, and see you at lunch.
So thank you, Vladislav. Thank you all. Just to say that in the proceedings that you will get after the conference, there will be some additional slides actually highlighting some of the solutions that the different panelists are offering. And there will also be a slide from Iridium that is also providing some of the solutions. So please look at the proceedings. There will be more information coming there. So what we are having now, so we are running a bit late. So I'll just ask Rainer, the technical program, just to give a quick update for the ground. Technical program.
Okay, I don't want to keep everybody longer in this room. Those people who work with me typically know hate the on-time performance indicator, which apparently says if you arrive 15 minutes late, you're still on time. And I think if we are 11 minutes late, we are late for lunch. Okay, right. the biggest takeaway for this afternoon is the technical sessions will start sharp 1300 hours. Okay, so I just encourage everybody who fights for the lunch is those individuals who are in session C have priority over all the rest. That's an emergency because we need to get the speakers into the session rooms, right? So we started 1300s. The good news is, listening to the panels, I think we have all the answers this afternoon and even new ideas for what's coming ahead of us. Then what is also important, there was a room change for the Delta session. So track 1D is now in this room and the track 6 Delta 2 is in another room. So just make sure that you also find the right room and not run around. And what is most important then at 17:30, we try to come back to this room.
So indeed, I mean, at 17:30, we're going to have Luca Parmitano. That will be another live session. So I will ask actually the people from the last session just to try to break maybe a couple of minutes before. So try to be here at 5:30 sharp, and we're going to hear from this talk, Beyond Earth, an astronaut's perspective on space and innovation and exploration. Maria Grazia this morning said a very good introduction for Luca Parmitano. I won't repeat any of this because we also have the reception and the SCNS Champion Award. I don't know, David, if you want to say anything.
Yes, good afternoon, David Batchelor from SESAR Joint Undertaking. So we're organizing and hosting this dinner tonight. The timings on this slide I notice are incorrect, so please don't arrive at 5:30 at the Bellevue Museum. At 5:30 you need to be in this room for the keynote speech. So the dinner is at 7:30 until 10:30 at the Bellevue Museum, which is downtown central Brussels. It's on the corner of what used to be called the Royal Park, next door to the Royal Palace. I think we're preparing a slide which will be printed and circulated around for those of you who need more details about how to get there. But I can tell you that obviously you can travel there from here by taxi. We also have a thing called Uber in Brussels if you want to use that. If you want to travel by public transport, you would be advised to take the number 12 bus, which you can pick up from Bourget, which is just outside the entrance of Eurocontrol, and walk down to the main road. The bus will take probably around 50 minutes to arrive, so you're advised to take the 6:30 bus. The buses run every 12 to 15 minutes, so you can take the one before, the one after. At 7:30, we start with drinks, speeches at 8 o'clock, and food thereafter. So you maybe have a little bit of a buffer, but you might want to get there for 7:30. Thank you.
Just a very important point. I think that, David, to confirm, there will not be people possible to buy tickets there. So that is not a possibility for people to come without a ticket. Is that correct?
That's correct. You have to have already registered for the dinner if you want to come and join the dinner.
Thank you. So with that, I will see you back in this room at 5:30. So thank you to the ones on the live stream. So we will reconvene with a live stream at 5:30 with a very exciting speech from Luca Parmitano. Thank you very much and talk to you later.
So, and while everybody now rushes off for the lunch, can I get the session chairs and the track chairs quickly up here?